Sony's smartphone division has seen better days. Recent offerings like the Sony Xperia 10 and Xperia 10 Plus haven't exactly wowed us, and the company's decision to produce all its handsets with 21:9 aspect ratio screens seemed like the idea of a crazy person. However, the Xperia 1 has prompted us to think again. With an improved chipset, camera array, and software loadout over previous phones, the Xperia 1 is certainly a premium alternative to its predecessors, but according to Sony it's also a soft relaunch of the Xperia brand, hence the name. It's also aimed at a narrower audience. While the 21:9 Xperia phones were aimed at those who love to consume movies on the go, and who appreciated the widescreen experience, the Xperia 1 is more specifically aimed at movie makers, with a specific movie creation app, and range of settings for optimizing viewing. Watching movies. Sony's intention in making phones with 21:9 screens is to make them the best handsets available for viewing movies, which are typically 21:9, unlike TV shows, YouTube videos, and streaming platforms originals, which are all in various other dimensions. If you watch movies on the Xperia 1, as with the Xperia 10 series, you won't get any black bars on the top or bottom. Sony has made some improvements over the Xperia 10 range for the Xperia 1, which it claims makes it even better for viewing movies. These include dynamic vibration, which causes the handset to vibrate slightly when viewing media in order to replicate the effect of booming audio in a cinema, and creator mode for the display, which slightly alters the RGB makeup of the screen to resemble the colors of a theater screen. These features all work well to replicate, albeit on a small scale, the cinematic experience, but we're still not convinced that the content is available right now for you to take full advantage. Sony claims 70% of content on Netflix is 21:9, which may be true, but that doesn't mean 70% of viewed content on Netflix is in that aspect ratio. TV shows and Netflix originals are much more popular for commutes or bedtime viewing, and these aren't in 21:9, so in reality you might not get as much out of the aspect ratio as Sony hopes. Making movies. Perhaps you won't be watching 21:9 content all the time, but Sony also wants to appeal to the crowd who'd be tempted to create such content for themselves, and so it has equipped the Xperia 1 with high-end video recording features in the new Cinema Pro app. You can record 21:9 content, and alter key settings like resolution, frames per second, white balance, shutter speed, lens size and color filter. It's all based on the tech in Sony Alpha cameras, and with it you can capture footage that's barely discernible from content shot on high-end cameras in terms of quality. There is one problem though, which could ruin the filmmaking experience. The Sony Xperia 1's display has a very limited max brightness, which means footage you shoot on the Xperia 1 may look great on the phone, but when you transfer it to another device it looks far too bright. Design. There's no question the phone stands out. With a super tall and uncommonly thin profile, the Xperia 1 is monolithic in its own way. The phone's 21:9 aspect ratio screen demands that it take on a new shape, one that is narrower than most comparable devices on the market. But your hand will love its narrow waist. The phone is easy to clutch as you walk about. Reaching the top of the screen with your thumb is an entirely different story though. It's simply impossible for most people. Sony has software to combat this issue, but still. These first impressions should not take away from the quality of the product assembled by Sony, which is top-notch through and through. The Xperia 1 features stunning Gorilla Glass 6 on both sides, a robust aluminum frame, and nearly all the specs and tech you could ask for in a modern phone. The Xperia 1 is one of the most seamless devices I've tested this year. The frame is curved perfectly to match the rounded glass front and back. The seams are aligned flawlessly, creating a tight seal where glass and metal meet. The polished sheen is downright luscious. Be warned, the phone will slip off your desk or table, so be careful where you place it. Sony also provides a bevy of hardware controls to help you interact with the Xperia 1, all of which are on the right side. The bottommost key is the dedicated camera button, something fairly unique these days. Not too many phones opt for the hardware camera button, and I'm glad Sony has kept it around. The two-stage key has great action, though it is a bit small. I noticed however that I accidentally gripped the button and launched the camera nearly every time I stuffed the phone into my pocket, and this got real old real fast. Next is the power button. It's a little further up the side and in a fairly good spot. Sony was also smart to put the fingerprint reader in the right side of the frame. It's easy to reach and sidesteps the problematic under the screen placement. It's also surely simpler to find than a rear-mounted reader would be. The last thing you'll find on the right edge is the volume rocker that works as intended. The SIM and memory card slot are tucked away into the top edge. Other than the USB-C port, the only functional elements built into the bottom edge are the two microphones. Sadly, there's no headphone jack. The triple camera module is significant. It's a vertical strip and it stands out from the rest of the rear glass, thanks to its raised profile. The phone will rock side to side when placed on a hard surface, such as a table or desk, and that might be bothersome to some people. And let's not forget the IP68 rating. I let the Xperia 1 at the bottom of a water-filled bucket for 15 minutes and the phone is still running like clockwork. Display. Let's ignore the goofy 21:9 aspect ratio for a second, and drool over the fact that the Xperia 1 has a 4K screen. Sony has flirted with 4K displays in the past, but this time around it truly delivered. The Xperia 1's display does absolutely everything you might ask of a phone. There's no notch, no punch hole, just screen from top to bottom, edge to edge. The pixel count is absurd, the color range insane, and the brightness very good. HDR content that natively supports the 21:9 aspect ratio will knock your socks off. The contrast range is simply astounding. We're talking the best movie watching experience I've had on a phone. That is, until you encounter content that's not 21:9. Then you get black bars at either end of the screen, and I'm not a fan of those. While most non-21:9 content is centered on the screen, some apps simply won't stretch down to fill the extra space at the bottom. This is annoying at best. As per the norm for a top-of-the-range phone, you have total control over the color profile, the blue light filter or night mode, the resolution settings, and so on. The Sony Xperia 1 has one of the best displays I've encountered this year, though content has to catch up quickly for the aspect ratio to be of any real use. Battery. I'm a bit surprised by Sony's decision-making with respect to the battery. To start, a 3330 mAh power cell is a bit small for a flagship. Many competing devices have batteries in the 3500 to 4000 mAh range. Moreover, Sony dropped wireless charging, a major no-no for a premium 2019 phone, especially at this price. Then there's the 4K screen to consider. The Ultra HD display has millions more pixels that need to be lit up than a Quad HD display. This is partially why the Xperia 1 didn't perform particularly well in the battery test. While I pushed the phone from morning to night on most days I used it, it survived little more than 12 hours in the web and video test. Competing devices reach 14 or more hours in these same tests. If there's one thing the Xperia 1 has going for it, it's Sony's stamina mode and rapid charging. Camera. The Xperia 1 has 4 cameras, 3 on the back and 1 on the front, like many modern flagships. The different lenses let you snap standard, wide angle, and zoomed images. The camera app opens quickly with a firm press to the dedicated camera button. You can also open it via the lock screen shortcut. The app's controls are what you expect from a modern flagship. That means lots of features and modes accessible via buttons, toggles, and drop-down menus. Sony's Intelligent Auto mode is the default. This uses AI to assess what the phone is pointed at, and adjust the camera settings accordingly, but you can turn Intelligent Auto off if you wish. Beyond this, the basic included modes include Portrait Selfie, Google Lens, Slow Motion, R Effect, Manual, Creative Effect, and Panorama. These are all fairly standard. I'd like to see a time-lapse mode, but unfortunately there isn't one included. The 3 lenses let you capture standard shots, telephoto shots, and 137-degree super wide-angle shots. The wide angle is so wide that it introduces obvious optical distortion. I like the flexibility afforded by these 3 lenses, though competing phones keep the ultra-wide angle in a more usable and less distorted range. Photos I captured with the Sony Xperia 1 are good, but short of great. Focus was generally sharp throughout. I didn't notice too many soft shots, even those taken in low light. Exposure, however, is all over the place. I'm not quite sure what's up with the HDR tool, but it doesn't appear to be doing its job. Colors look a bit muted to my eyes, but the real-life vibrance doesn't necessarily come through in the photos. This is in direct opposition to the photos we see from phones such as the Samsung Galaxy S10, which pushes colors a bit. Noise and compression artifacts are evident in low light shots. Speaking of which, the Xperia 1 doesn't include a dedicated low light mode, another stunning omission on a 2019 flagship. The selfie camera does an acceptable job. It's certainly not bad. The selfie portrait software simplifies the process of capturing selfies. I think the bokeh shots have decent edges, but the blur is a bit too intense. It's hard for me to understand how a company such as Sony, one that has a rich heritage in imaging, can turn out such a mediocre camera on one of its most important devices of the year. The Galaxy S10, Pixel 3, and Huawei P30 Pro have the Xperia 1 soundly beat when it comes to imaging. Sony's flagships have been able to capture 4K video for some time. Not only does the Xperia 1 record the high-quality video I've seen in some time, the multiple mics mean you get excellent sound quality too. Audio. If you are an audiophile, phones from Sony and LG are your best bet. The Xperia 1 may lack a 3.5mm headphone jack, but it delivers on nearly every other front. Stereo sound is reproduced when the earpiece and bottom-firing speakers work together. The sound is quite good when you tilt the phone sideways to watch movies. You can also opt to turn on Sony's dynamic vibration, which will rumble the phone similar to a game controller to give you a multidimensional experience. Sometimes this feature is fun, and other times it is just too much. Software. The Xperia 1 ships with Android 9, the latest operating system from Google. Sony's software skin is fairly light, but includes some unique features. For example, reaching the top of the display is a bit of a challenge. Thankfully there's a one-handed mode to save the day. Double tap the home button and the entire desktop shrinks. Side sense is similar to Samsung's Edge screen. Double tapping either side of the frame opens up a small window with shortcuts to several key apps and actions, but it could be a bit more reliable when you want to open it. Split-screen multitasking works really well on the tall screen. Sony introduced a new app for the Xperia 1 that allows you to easily access and configure which apps appear on the screen. I particularly like that you can create app pairs, which let you instantly open Gmail and Google Calendar, or Chrome and YouTube together. The Galaxy Note series has a similar feature. Gaming. Sony has partnered with a few popular game studios, so there are 21:9 mobile games available for the handset, like Fortnite, Asphalt 9 Legends, and Arena of Valor. Having the extra screen space meant we could use touchscreen controls without our thumbs obscuring vital parts of the display. The screen aspect ratio, cutting-edge Snapdragon 855 chipset, and dynamic audio, all work together to create an enjoyable experience, making the Sony Xperia 1 a great phone for gaming. Verdict. Sony's path through the smartphone market over the last decade has been full of peaks and valleys. I hope the Xperia 1 would represent one of those peaks. Sadly, it's somewhere halfway up the hill. The phone's hardware is outstanding. You've got nearly everything you could want: Gorilla Glass 6, metal frame, waterproof housing, 4K screen, triple cameras, and more. However, it falls short in a few places, including battery life, camera performance, and general usability thanks to the odd shape. Further, there's not enough 21:9 content, both videos and apps, to make sense of the stretched aspect ratio. Would I recommend this phone? Only to people specifically looking for something unique, or those who place an emphasis on media consumption. The price tag is simply too high for what the phone delivers.